My name is David. I was born and raised in New York. Growing up, I lived with my dad, mom, and younger sister, making us a family of four. My dad was a salesman at a securities company. He had a good sales record at work and made good money. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but my dad's earnings were more than enough to support us. Following my parents' wishes, I ended up taking entrance exams for private middle schools and got into one. It wasn't exactly a prestigious school, but there were definitely a lot of kids from wealthy families, and some students boasted of being slightly rich. I always thought it was wrong to brag about money, especially since I hadn't turned it myself. Kevin, who was a grade above me, was the kind of guy who liked to one-up me, and he was often annoying me. Even though we were in different grades, our middle school was big on mixed grade activities. We did extracurriculars, cleaning duties, and even had lunch in mixed age groups. It would have been fine if I could interact with respectable seniors or cute juniors, but unfortunately, I always ended up in the same group as Kevin, which really bummed me out. One day, during cleaning time, we were cleaning the art room. Of course, with my mixed age group, including Kevin.
Hey David, your dad drives a cheap family car, right? My family has a fancy foreign car.
I was just trying to get the cleaning done quickly and was wiping the tables efficiently. But Kevin, he wasn't lifting a finger, started this conversation. Don't know. I'm not interested in cars. Don't even know what kind my dad has.
You're just pretending not to know because you don't want to admit it. Whatever, it's clear my family is richer.
I didn't care about who was wealthier, but then I remembered something and walked over to the blackboard in the art room, picked up a piece of chalk. By the way, my dad's car had this symbol on it. I drew the symbol that was on the front of my dad's car on the blackboard with chalk, and a classmate in our cleaning group said, "Oh, that's a Mercedes-Benz, right?" That moment made me realize, so that's what it is. Kevin heard this and got angry. What's with you all of a sudden? You're just showing off now. That's a low blow, man. You're the worst. I thought Kevin was the real problem, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to start a fight. I just kept cleaning quietly. After that incident, Kevin seemed to target me even more. I heard from a classmate later that Kevin's family car was actually a lower model than ours. I didn't care, but it seemed to bother Kevin. He always seemed eager to look down on me. It was not just about money, but also about test scores and the number of presents I received for my birthday. I couldn't wait for Kevin to graduate. But then I remembered our school was combined junior high and high school, so he would still be around me, even in high school, which was a real downer. Then, in the summer, I was in 8th grade and Kevin was in 9th. Something happened that would give Kevin even more ammunition against me. There was one incident where I was completely looked down upon by Kevin. My parents got divorced. My dad was a salesman with good performance, definitely the outgoing personality type. Although the term outgoing personality might not have been used in his generation, he has gained momentum in the words of my dad's generation. My dad, who was in high gear, earned a lot of money and was a good communicator, so he started getting close to women who worked at night. My mom found out about this and served him with divorce papers. She's not the type to cry about it. She's pretty straightforward and decisive. Dad apologized and asked Mom to start over, but she quickly cut ties and said goodbye. I supported my mom's decision, but reality hit hard. Our financial situation turned grim with the sudden loss of Dad's income, especially since Dad had debts from his extramarital affair. We couldn't expect any child support from him, so we became a low-income family. I had to transfer from my private school to a public middle school in the district, starting in the second semester of 8th grade. Mom felt guilty, but I told her it wasn't her fault. Dad was to blame. I didn't have many fond memories of that private school anyway, so I didn't mind the change. Plus, I was glad to be rid of the annoying Kevin. I told my friends I was moving to a new school, but didn't even say goodbye to Kevin. After summer break, I transferred to a new school and never saw him again. My new public school had many of my old elementary school buddies, and I actually had a great time there, way better than at the private school. This flood of memories about my middle school years came back because I'm currently waiting for a job interview at a company. So, the company I'm interviewing for is the largest IT company in the country. My friends told me it'd be tough to get hired, but I passed the document screening and the first interview. The other day, I called the results from the second interview. I passed that too. Now, I'm here, all pumped up for the final interview. And at this place, I had an unexpected reunion. There were 5 of us called for the final interview. We were to be interviewed one by one. I was the last in line, number 5. Before the interviews started, while the 5 of us were waiting, an interviewer came in to check our names. When I saw his face, I was like, huh. It was Kevin, the senior I disliked back in middle school. He looked a bit rounder in the face, so I didn't recognize him immediately, but his way of talking was a dead giveaway. At first, Kevin didn't seem to recognize me, but when he got to my name, he did a double take.
David,
he said, clearly reacting differently to my name than he had with the other 4. This interviewer, who I believed to be Kevin, looked me right in the eye after calling my name. I felt like saying, "Hey, long time no see," and waving at him, but given the tense atmosphere of the interview setting, I held back. Before I could do anything more relaxed, Kevin quickly looked away and explained the interview process to all 5 of us, as if nothing had happened. Afterward, we were taken to the front of interview room and asked to sit on chairs outside to wait our turn. The first person was called in and the interview started. About 7 to 8 minutes later, the first candidate came out and the second was called in. I quietly asked the first guy how it went.
They didn't ask me much, just the usual stuff. Why I wanted the job, what I'd like to do if I got it.
He replied with a relieved look on his face.
So, pretty standard stuff.
The guy who was 4th in line for the interview said in a relieved tone, and the guy 3rd in line chuckled, and everyone relaxed a little. The 2nd, 3rd, and 4th candidates were each done in about the same 7 to 8 minutes. Finally, it was my turn. David. I was called in. Excuse me. As I entered the room, two interviewers were sitting in front of me, and one of them was definitely Kevin.
Let's start the interview. First question. Please tell us your motivation for applying.
The other interviewee, who was not Kevin, asked me that question. Here it comes, just like the others said it would be. I gave my prepared answer. I'm motivated by my previous job in system development, but I wanted to tackle larger scale projects. My experience will allow me to contribute effectively to your team. As soon as I finished speaking, Kevin jumped in.
Many people say they want to do big things and join our company. But the reality is a lot of the work is detailed and mundane. Are you aware of this?
His tone was almost confrontational. The other interviewer glanced at Kevin, looking a bit flustered. But Kevin kept going.
You seem to have a naive view of our company. I'm giving you a special challenge, a test, 10 minutes long.
The other interviewer looked surprised.
Kevin, what are you doing? We didn't give tests to the other four.
Kevin replied,
It's okay. This guy is special. I never expected such a reunion. Right, David?
It was clear Kevin remembered me from middle school. Yes, it's been a long time. Kevin, I was wondering if I was allowed to talk about this during the interview, but Kevin seemed to have more authority than the other interviewee, and no one could control his unruly behavior. The other interviewer looked in confusion, but he gave up and listened to us in silence.
Man, I was surprised when I returned from summer break in my junior year, and you had just vanished. There was no goodbye or anything, and I thought that wasn't nice. Have you learned any manners since becoming an adult? I could reject you right now without even interviewing you. But it's not fun just to dismiss you outright, so I prepared for this test. I didn't know you were applying until I saw the list of candidates today. I had to scramble to get this test from the website at the last minute.
Kevin said this and pulled out some papers from his clear folder. It's not a test on a computer, it's a paper form test. Huh. Then, he showed the interviewer next to him the test I was about to be given.
How about that, Chris? Check this out. Even you, a graduate of Harvard University, wouldn't be able to solve this, right?
Yes, it's a math problem. It's too difficult for me to solve.
Chris, the interviewer, as he flipped through the test.
See, David, even my coworker, a Harvard University graduate, is stumped by this challenging problem. And it took me, a University of New York graduate, an hour to solve it. So, your chances of solving it in 10 minutes are zero less than zero.
Kevin laughed triumphantly. I was a bit surprised to learn that Kevin had graduated from the University of New York. He took advantage of my silence to further assert his dominance.
I heard from your classmates later on. You became PUA because your parents divorced when you were in middle school, and you couldn't afford private school anymore. So you just disappeared? PUA thing?
Kevin laughed again. I thought to myself how terrible it is to laugh at someone else's misfortune.
Well, you've always been a weird one. Regardless of your family situation, you're just incompetent and bottom of the barrel when it comes to education. Anyway, I'm going to give you this test now, and I can't wait to see you crushed and walking out of here. I never thought I'd get to enjoy our reunion like this. I should thank you. Well, someone at the bottom like you won't be able to solve it. But if by some miracle you do, I'll hire you with an annual salary of $10 million.
Kevin said, laughing as if he was having the time of his life. I had no response to that. The other interviewer, Chris, just sat there with a strained expression. I wondered if Kevin's behavior was even compliant with company policies. Definitely not. I regretted not recording this on a voice recorder, but who would have expected such disrespectful behavior in a job interview? This irregular situation was almost laughable in its absurdity.
All right, I'll hand out the test now.
Kevin announced, standing up with the test papers in hand. Chris hurriedly set up a folding table and then placed the test paper, printed with questions, in front of me.
You have 10 minutes. If you give up, you can leave before time's up. Of course, that means you're not hired.
Kevin said, glancing at the wall clock. As the second hand hit 0, he declared,
Start now.
I flipped over the test in front of me and started reading the questions. As I carefully went through each problem, Kevin taunted,
Hard, isn't it? I knew you couldn't do it. Just go home.
I ignored Kevin's remarks and began working on the problems. Kevin stopped trying to talk to me after a while, but after 5 minutes had passed, he said, Your hand has stopped. I commend your effort to try and solve at least one question. But you know, sometimes it's important to know when to give up. Ready to throw in the towel? I replied to him then, No, I'm not giving up. My response made Kevin raise his voice even more.
Stubborn, aren't you? It's not good to cling to false hope. It's better to cut your losses and move on to things you can actually do.
You're right, Kevin. Clinging to the impossible isn't like me at all. But you're making a big mistake. I haven't stopped because I've given up. I said this and put down my pen, laying it on the table.
A big mistake. How dare you say such insolent things? Well, you still have 3 minutes left. Stick it out if you want. It's your choice.
Kevin replied angrily. No need to stick it out, because I've already solved everything. Should I hand it over to you, Kevin? I said. Kevin became even more enraged.
You have an attitude. Oh, I see. You're just too proud to submit a blank sheet, so you scribbled something on it. But if it's all wrong, it's meaningless. You're not getting hired either way. Goodbye and take care.
Hold on a second, Kevin. Calm down. Just grade it properly. The answers are on the website, right? Kevin looked at me disgusted and said, That's a hassle. He opened his laptop, searched for the answer page, and compared it to the test paper I had handed him. After a while, Kevin's face turned pale. Is something wrong, Kevin? I asked. The other interviewer, Chris, leaned over to look at Kevin's laptop screen, and then at my test paper.
All the answers are correct.
Chris exclaimed, raising his voice for the first time. Kevin was speechless. Say something, Kevin. It's terrible to conduct a test and not grade it properly. When I said this, Kevin accused, You. Where did you get the answers? How did you cheat? I won't forgive this. Exasperated, I sighed deeply and said, All the answers are correct, aren't they? And I didn't cheat. How could I have cheated in this situation? Kevin, you printed out these questions on a whim. It would have been impossible for me, waiting in the lounge, to know about this in advance and find the answers. The other 4 candidates can vouch that I didn't leave the waiting area. Now, please graciously admit that all my answers are correct, Kevin. Hearing my words, Kevin, visibly trembling, retorted,
Don't joke with me. How can someone with such a low educational background solve these difficult questions? What exactly are you?
I answered his question. Kevin, actually, these difficult questions were created by me back in middle school. I said this with a straight face.
That's impossible. How could a middle schooler, especially you back then, create questions that even I, a University of New York graduate, struggled with? Are you lying?
It's not a lie. I remember telling you back then that I always got 100% in math. Don't you remember? I brought up our middle school days. Kevin always liked to boast about his grades and was annoyingly persistent in asking me about my test results every time. Whenever I honestly told him my grades, he would get angry and accuse me of lying, saying, "Do you realize what happens when you lie to me? Stop messing around." I always scored above 95 in all subjects, especially excelling in math with consistent perfect scores. But Kevin never believed me, so I just let it be.
Back in middle school, I always thought you were lying. I never thought of you as a studious person.
Kevin still seemed to think I was lying.
Kevin, did you actually see his resume thoroughly? The education section after high school is on another page, and I missed it too, but look at this.
Chris, the other interviewer, said this while looking at the computer screen, showing Kevin the education page from my application form. Kevin rolled his eyes as he looked at the screen.
What? Graduated from the University of New York, and then went to the Technical University of Munich, known as TUM, majoring in engineering.
Kevin read this out loud, to which Chris responded, TUM is known as one of the world's top engineering schools. It has produced several Nobel Prize winners. The level is just incomparable. Amazing. Kevin was speechless, taken aback. No, I didn't receive a Nobel Prize, so it's not incredible. I've always been interested in programming since I was little, learning it independently and excelling in STEM subjects. In middle school, I developed apps as a hobby and studied IT. The test you gave me today was something I created back when I transferred from private to public school in 8th grade. At the time, we were poor and I couldn't use a computer, so I made and posted college-level math problems online to pass the time. I was surprised that you found the one I created and used it in the test. I explained this to both of them.
I see. You graduated from the University of New York and then TUM, which is why your post-university education is on a separate page. I apologize for overlooking it. It's an honor to have someone as talented as you work with us. But then again, are you sure our company is right for you? With your qualifications, it would be easy for you to join a renowned IT company in Germany, or even start your own business, right?
Chris said, looking me in the eye. Kevin remained silent throughout. Yes, as you said, I considered working for a German IT company and even starting my own business. However, I wanted to contribute to my home country, America. So I wanted to work for your company. I believe there are endless possibilities here with a global perspective. When I responded this way, Chris's eyes lit up.
Yes, our company is still growing. So we'd really appreciate your help. Right, Kevin?
Chris sought Kevin's agreement. However, Kevin, unable to accept the situation and his pride wounded, then he mutters to himself, "How could I lose to David?"
Kevin, you're not losing. You're a University of New York graduate, after all.
Chris tried to console him, but Kevin lamented, "I was always jealous of David in middle school. He was respected by everyone, teachers and students alike, and was capable of everything. I was relieved when he transferred out. I worked hard, graduated from the University of New York, and climbed up to this position at a renowned IT company, and now he's threatening my status again. Give me a break." Then the door to the interview room opened with a click. Turning around, I saw a man standing there.
President Smith.
It was the CEO, Smith.
I came to check on the final interview, which took quite some time, and I overheard some of the conversation at the entrance. I made a mistake in leaving the interview to Kevin. You've let your personal feelings interfere far too much. Chris must have been in a tough spot, not being able to speak up against his senior. But now that I'm here, I can say this clearly as the president. First, David.
The president then called my name. Yes. When I responded, the president said, "Actually, I was interested in you since seeing your application. Chris mentioned earlier, and I agree, that you could earn a much higher salary at a top German company or even start your own business with your talent. But you still want to work for our company." The president asked me this question. "Thank you, President. Yes, I did think a lot about where to work. But I chose to work for your company. As I told Chris earlier, I want to help develop an American company with a global vision." I replied, and the president nodded in agreement, saying, "Thank you." Then he continued speaking.
And now, Kevin.
Kevin was called. He said, "Yes," in a small voice, and looked at the president. He looked like a puppy, staring anxiously at his owner, expecting his owner to be angry with him.
I'm shocked at your brazen behavior. You've shamelessly brought your personal vendetta into my company's recruitment process. You're fired.
The president declared firmly.
Please, President. Anything but that. I'm truly sorry. Please forgive me.
Kevin begged with tearful eyes, but the president was unyielding.
Kevin, work is all about trust. Actually, it's not just work. All relationships are based on trust. I trusted you with the interview process, and you betrayed that trust by acting on your own whims. A talented candidate like David comes for an interview, and you try to disqualify him with terrible treatment. If we let that happen, it would be a significant loss for the company. Losing you would be better than losing David, Kevin. In fact, we don't need someone like you at all, who loses trust regardless of being a University of New York graduate.
Kevin just looked down silently. Chris appeared somewhat relieved. The president continued talking.
Well, I did trust you with the interview, but fairness is crucial, so we installed a voice recorder in the interview room without your knowledge.
The president placed the recorder on the table and played the recording. I inwardly cheered the president for having a voice recorder. The recorder started playing the conversation I had been given before the test, and Kevin's voice, full of intimidation, was unmistakable.
No matter your family background, you're just incompetent with a bottom-tier education. Did you even graduate high school? Just barely a high school graduate, right? Anyway, I'll give you this test now and enjoy seeing you crushed and leaving. I never thought I'd enjoy such a reunion. Thank you. This test is probably unsolvable for someone at the bottom. If you somehow solve it, I'll hire you for an annual $10 million salary.
The president stopped the recording there.
So, Kevin, what an outrageous thing you've said. You thought David was the bottom of the barrel, but he's actually a highly educated and capable individual who solved all the difficult questions. Who's going to pay the promised $10 million? Should I, the president, pay it? If you decide such things on your own, we might have to consider legal action. It's a serious offense, Kevin.
The president spoke to Kevin sternly.
I'm sorry, President. It was just a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean it.
Kevin tried to excuse himself. You conducted an unnecessary recruitment test with a candidate just based on your words. You'll have to take responsibility for your actions. We'll cut your salary and bonus this month and allocate it as part of David's $10 million reward. Of course, it won't be enough, so you'll have to make monthly payments to cover the rest. The president said even more sternly.
That's...
Kevin looked utterly despairing and couldn't say anything more. The president continued without hesitation.
You're also responsible for your words and a crime of insulting David. If you're sued for defamation, you'll lose. I'll keep this recording with me.
I couldn't help but admire President Smith for taking down the obnoxious Kevin so thoroughly. I felt incredibly relieved and pledged in my heart to follow President Smith and contribute to his company. 3 months have passed since then. I was hired by Smith's company, a leading IT firm named G-Tech, and worked in a significant position. Since joining, G-Tech has embarked on more global business strategies, and I've contributed using my German skills and the technology knowledge I gained from the Foreign Engineering University. Kevin had to leave G-Tech and now works as a systems engineer in a smaller company. I happened to bump into a middle school classmate the other day, and we talked for a bit in a cafe. His name was Brian, and he was in the same group with me in middle school at the time, so he and Kevin had been hanging out together.
You're working at G-Tech, right? Kevin used to work there too. He became famous among us for getting into the University of New York and joining a renowned IT company. But I heard he wasn't well liked due to his attitude.
I told Brian the name of the company I worked for, and he told me about it.
But you know, Kevin was really down after you suddenly transferred. He kept saying, "Why did he have to leave?" and looked dejected.
No, Kevin said he felt refreshed when I left.
He should have been more friendly with you. He always acted tough and wasn't honest. Deep down, he wanted to be friends with you.
Brian said, if that was true, it was quite clumsy of Kevin, but I felt a bit relieved to hear it. This is something I heard recently. The president told me that Kevin had offered to pay me several $100s every month after he left G-Tech to help cover the $10 million he owed me. But I refused to accept it because I was being paid enough at my company, as I didn't want to take money from someone struggling. I'd rather focus on developing the company and improving both its performance and my salary.
The president said Kevin seems to have changed a bit since working at another company. He's reflecting and working diligently. Kevin's a capable guy when he's not overconfident. If he continues to work hard, I'd be willing to work with him again.
The president remarked. I felt the same. One day, Kevin and I, such as the oil and water relationship, could become something more meaningful, like a well-mixed dressing, even if we don't thoroughly blend. With these farts, a few months later, Chris and I were assigned to conduct mid-career interviews. On the day of the interviews,
The fifth candidate is seeking re-employment.
Chris noted, looking at the application form. Indeed. Kevin, University of New York graduate. What should we do? We both knew our thoughts were aligned. If Kevin had truly repented and was willing to cooperate and work with everyone, we'd want to work with him again.
Excuse me.
A man said as he entered the interview room. Seeing Kevin's softened expression, Chris and I exchanged knowing glances and started the interview.